Join us today for a family Sunday dinner. We have implemented Sunday dinner again at the house, and this is what we made. To actually start off dinner, I began with finishing up or putting together a quick dessert. That way it could be in the refrigerator, ready and going, and I didn't have to worry about it until after dinner. And I made these individual serving size banana puddings that we end up baking at the very end with a little meringue on top. They were fantastic. So I just put these miniature vanilla wafers in the bottom of each of these jars. And then I had made a custard earlier. You could use pudding or anything, but basically it is egg yolks with some sugar and flour and vanilla and milk. And I'll leave any recipes that I used on this day in the description box, but I just layer vanilla wafers along with the bananas and the custard into the ramekins, and then I pop them in the refrigerator and then leave them until after dinner. Because the meringue is going to get toasted, I did separate and put the separated egg whites in the refrigerator and just leave them in there for the day, and they were so cute. I then moved on to getting the main course, which is going to be a pork loin that I bake in the oven, and I want to do a little bit of a brine. The best part about brining pork loin is you only brine it for 20 minutes, so it's not some overnight or long time of brining. So I started out with some salt, some good sea salt, and then some really warm water so that the salt itself will dissolve. And then I moved on and put some brown sugar, so you add a little bit of sweetness. Now, it doesn't cause the pork loin to actually be sweet, but the sugar and salt is what the brine consists of. Also, to give it a little bit of flavoring, I use a couple of tablespoons of some apple cider vinegar that is a good organic raw apple cider vinegar, as well as some red pepper flakes. I'm just gonna let all of this dissolve for several minutes and the temperature of the water to start coming down. And then you could add ice or cold water. I'm gonna do cold water. But before I add the cold water, like I said, I let this set for several minutes, and then I'm going to add in, it's the whole pork loin, but I have cut it in half. And then I'm going to top it off with cold water so that I can get as close to covering the pork loin as possible. My dish wasn't quite deep enough. I've decided to show you the real order of making a meal like this. You could call it a 4-course meal. You could have served the salad with the meal anyway. We'll get to that. I needed to jump over to the appetizer, which is going to be this caramelized onion and bacon on some brie cheese that's baked in the oven, and it was absolutely amazing. But the onions and such, they go for such a long time, and I can get this prepped a little bit early and ready to go in the oven. So I start by slicing some bacon real thin, and also getting the onion ready for the same dish. So I am going to slice or dice up an onion real thin as well. And I'm going to get that bacon going on the wood cook stove that you see here. This is going to make my life a little bit simpler, not everything crowding its way on the stove top. But if you don't have a wood cook stove, of course, just use your regular stovetop. While that bacon is cooking, I'm going to set aside the onion, and then I am also going to add a shallot. And the shallot is going to be diced as thin or sliced real thinly as well. And then we're going to add the shallot and the onion together to cook down or caramelize. And that's like a 20-30 minute process. My timer has gone off for the pork loin, and so I'm gonna grab that out of the brine. Ideally, it would have been covered in brine, but we're totally fine, and it turned out fantastic. So I know that we are fine, but you really do want to set a timer. You do not want this going too much terribly longer than that 20 minutes. That is more than enough. Our daughter's puppy and Roberto never left my side. They stayed in to help me cook all day. They are so cute. Along with the pork loin, I am going to do just some roasted potatoes. These are our homegrown potatoes that we grew this summer together. They are all sorts of colors. They are these pinks and purples and reds and all these different bright, beautiful colors on the outside. They have a white flesh on the inside. And then, of course, I do have some potatoes that have different color flesh on the inside, but I thought these would be beautiful and colorful roasted up for dinner. So I'm going to get them pre-ready by covering them in water. When the time comes, I'll boil them for just 5 minutes, and then that helps with the cooking time. They get nice and crisp in the oven. Back to this appetizer, the wood stove is getting a little bit hot on that side, and so I'm gonna move the pan down to cool down the pan a little bit, pull the bacon out, and we're just going to set the bacon aside, and then we are going to add in the onion and shallots, as well as a little bit of salt and pepper. And now we're gonna put these on the cooler side of the wood cook stove and allow them to cook down for about 30 minutes, stirring frequently. I made a glaze for the pork and started preheating the oven. I am going to glaze the pork every 15 minutes while it cooks at 425 degrees in the oven on a sheet pan. And then the glaze consisted of, today we did some raspberry jam or jelly, and then we also added some hoisin sauce to it. I want to use up what's in the fridge and then open new. Basically, for the double pork loins, or the whole loin, it was 1 cup of jelly and then about 1/2 of a cup of hoisin sauce. I'm also going to do some fresh garlic cloves. I'm going to crush those up, and then I'm going to get them in the little masher machine thing that I have, because I want the garlic to just really mellow out and be smooth throughout the entire glaze. I don't want big chunks of it, because I certainly do not want chunks of burnt garlic throughout. To that, we are going to just knob off a little chunk of fresh garlic. This is ginger. Ginger is amazing. You can peel it so simply. I just used one of these sharp-edged little spoons. I think they're grapefruit spoons anyway, out, and I just peel off the outer coat of the ginger as best that I can, and then we use a grater. And to finish off the glaze, I went ahead and used a little bit of organic apple cider vinegar, or a raw apple cider vinegar. It has a little more of a robust flavor to it, as well as a few tablespoons of butter, some salt, some pepper. You could do red pepper flakes. You could add some herbs in here if you wanted. Just anything kind of that sweet and tart between the vinegar and the jelly is fantastic. I'm going to heat that glaze on low. I have dried and rinsed off the pork loin. I have them ready to go, and I'm going to preheat a cast iron pan with a little bit of oil, because I want to get a beautiful sear on the pork loin before it goes in the oven. And in order to get a good sear, once that pan is really preheated, you'll see like The oil is super glossy. It kind of ripples, and then I am just going to season liberally, but simply with salt and black pepper as far as the pork loin goes. And then each side ends up being seared for 5 minutes, and you want it to naturally loosen from the pan. You want it to have that nice brown color to it, and you do not want to overcook it here, but you do not want to be afraid to really let it go at a high temperature and get a good color on it. After I've seared off both of the pork loins, this is also why I cut the giant loin in half. I don't have a pan obviously big enough when it was whole that I could sear it. I move it straight to the baking dish, and then we are going to use this glaze here, and we are going to begin glazing our pork loin. Now it's been about 20 minutes on the onions and shallots, and they have caramelized down really, really well. And I have some fresh rosemary and thyme and some garlic. So we only want the garlic to get aromatic, like to give off its flavor and its texture. We do not want to cook it for the 20-30 minutes. We do not want to burn the garlic. So I crunch a couple of garlic cloves into basically that bacon grease with the caramelized onions, and then I add the herbs to it, as well as a good splash of balsamic vinegar. It makes it super dark in color. It is not burnt, but it has a fantastic, the vinegar and the oil and the onion and shallot and garlic, it is just such a good combination. I don't care what you want to put it on top of. It is wonderful together. And then I go ahead and add back in the bacon, and I want to move it to the coolest part of the stove. I do not want it cooking anymore. I just want it to cook down, but now is a good time to get a little taste test in and make sure that everything is coming along all the way throughout the meal. We taste test everything and make sure that our salt and pepper and all of that is spot on. Now it is just before dinner, and every 15 minutes I have been putting some of that glaze on the pork. Again, it's going at 425, and so I am going to get a little bit of goat cheese out and ready, letting it come up to room temperature. But for the goat cheese, I am going to roll it in first. I dice up some of these dry figs. I get them from Azure. They are amazing. And after I get the figs all diced up, I start chopping some walnuts into the figs. It can be as chunky or as finely diced as you would like. And then of course I just use any combination of dry fruit and nuts, so have at it, make your own choice on this. And because the figs and the walnuts are going to be deep, rich flavors, goat cheese has such a strong flavor to it, I went ahead and chopped some fresh this is mint. I did mint. Forgive me. I have several fresh herbs going on in this dinner tonight. So I did some mint. It gives it kind of a brightness to the goat cheese. And then goat cheese, this Costco goat cheese is actually really a good flavored goat cheese, and it has a long expiration. Therefore, I have some for tonight's dinner, and then I also have some put away for later in the year, and then it broke when I pulled it out. That's totally fine. The more toppings, the merrier, in my opinion. And so I just grabbed the little chunks of goat cheese and I roll them into the nut and fruit mixture. And then the final step is I am going to use some of this wildflower, I believe, honey from Azure as well. It's getting a little bit crystallized. That is fine. Someone told me to put them in the windowsill, so we're going to try that out. So the honey will melt into this as it sits in the warm room for maybe 45 minutes to an hour, because we want it to come become soft, and we want it to all come up to room temperature. All of the flavors are marrying during this time, and it is a fantastic, quick and easy hors d'oeuvre for any party you might throw. As far as the brie goes, I love brie. I think it is a wonderful cheese. Goat cheese, I was introduced to it by Caleb. He absolutely loves it. It took some growing for me. It is a little bit strong in my opinion, but I think brie is not strong at all, and I think it is wonderful. I do split it in half because I know how many people are coming. We're not doing a long hors d'oeuvre hour or something like that, and so I want to, because these Kirkland size ones are just huge, I think. So I did cut it in half. If you don't cut the brie in half, it does hold together a little bit better than when it melts, but that's okay. I don't care about any of that. It's just my family. I'm not here to impress anyone, but I do want to serve them a fantastic meal. So I did trim the top off of the brie. It has kind of that whatever the powdery substance is, and then I top it. This topping does look very, very dark. I assure you it is not burnt. What it is the dark, rich color from the balsamic vinegar along with the caramelized everything. It is a very dark topping, but it was fantastic. I'm going to pop this in the oven just maybe 5-10 minutes until it's all melted together. Sadly, I didn't really pickle anything this past summer. I didn't get enough of anything to pickle. Here you go. So I got some store-bought pickles. I like to take a little bit of help from the store. These are wonderful, as well as I saved the jars to put the pickles back into any of the leftovers. I haven't even talked to you hardly at all. I've just told you what I was doing. I'm setting the table now. I just really look at this and think, if you want your family to really be part of it, Sunday dinner, make it fantastic. Do those couple of extra things. It is not a normal weeknight dinner that I would make hors d'oeuvres. It's not a normal dinner that I would make individual servings of dessert. You know, most of the time it's served straight from the pan on the stovetop. But Aaron really feels like the kids are all moving in such different directions. Getting them to come together, getting them to be one unit is so important to him. And he asked me to go back and start doing this again. And I didn't even reluctantly agree. I jumped on it. I enjoy doing this for my family. I am in seventh heaven, you know, doting on them, making these meals, setting this table, and all the while that I'm doing this, Aaron is changing everything out on my truck, from brakes to oil, the whole 9 yards, just a whole deal. As you can see, the kids are starting to roll in. Aaron and Wyatt have just finished my truck. He is getting in the shower because he is covered from head to toe in oil and brake dust and all of the craziness. And so I popped in. I didn't make the bread from scratch this time. You take some help from the store when you need it. It's a very big meal to make everything from scratch. And so I just got one of these take and bake baguettes here, and I popped that in the oven. We already have the pork loin. It's been going. It takes about 90 minutes to cook a pork loin like that. And then as I've got everything set on the table, like I told you earlier, was going to just boil the potatoes for 5 minutes. I drain them. I add a little bit of oil to them, as well as some salt and some pepper. And then I just decided to do a little bit of dry Italian seasoning. And then they are going to go in the oven while we do the whole meal. It takes about 40 minutes for you to roast potatoes like this, but these are so simple. So just straight in the pan and then into the oven. I have pulled the pork loin out. It is resting on the cool end of the wood cook stove. Grabbing that brie out of the oven. It is melted a little. Things are falling off of it, so I kind of top it back on top there. And then I went ahead, so that there's a freshness and a brightness, I went ahead and diced up some of these green scallions or green onions, whatever you want to call them. And then I topped it with those. I just wonder in how many clips little Blue is in the background. He just hung out with Grandma all day, but here is our table, and there was Roberto off in the corner. And then my little Caleb showed up with gifts. These are tip-ups for ice fishing. Our family is excited and ready for ice fishing to begin. It all seems complicated, but believe it or not, it's a fairly simple meal to make. Now, we had the appetizers. Everyone sat around the table, talked about their day, enjoyed the beginning of the meal. We moved on to the salad course. I made this super simple. That's kind of what I'm saying, is making it special and fun for the family. It is nothing more than some lettuce that I chopped up, as well as some cucumbers and tomato, and then some of those green onions, those scallions, off to the side, and then voila, there you go, a salad course. My timing worked out actually quite well. When we started the salad, I put in some bread that again was a, take and bake kind of thing. It takes 15 minutes. It happens to cook at the same temperature as the potatoes that are in the oven. And then the pork loin, we had just covered it with some parchment and some foil. The parchment so that the glaze didn't stick to the foil. Anyway, there you go. It was sitting on the cooler part of the wood stove, allowing it to reabsorb a bunch of its juices as well. And then by this time, dinner has been already close to an hour of conversation and enjoying one another and hanging out. And now we are serving the pork. So I just slice up the pork and then put it on this beautiful plate that I have had for a super long time. I have no idea where my mother got it, but I know that growing up it was in our house as well, and so I think that is fantastic. And then I had put the remainder of the glaze in these two dishes so we can separate them on the two opposite ends of the table, and then I put a little glaze over the pork and then serve the glaze on the side. I sliced up this piping hot bread, so I did leave it out for a couple of minutes so that it's not gooey in the middle when you slice it. But we have hot bread on a board with a little bit of butter. So there we have it, the beautiful pork. I didn't see a need for it to be anything added, made more fantastic. So that goes to the table, as well as these roasted potatoes that ended up just absolutely beautiful. We've cleared the table. The kids have gotten out a game. They love board games. I don't know if you know that about our family. They play a ton of them. And so while that was all getting set up at the table, Cody has done most of the plates and kind of a few dishes. And I made some meringue. So meringue is just some whipped egg whites, as well as a little cream of tartar and some sugar. And then I am going to pipe it onto these very cool individual banana puddings. And they are so cute, so beautiful. This was an amazing thing to make. And then the one thing I should have done is I should have doubled it, because everyone wanted seconds on the dessert as the evening kind of rolled along. And I popped the meringue under the broiler for a few minutes, and they turned out so beautiful. Well, there you have it. That was our beautiful family dinner. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Be blessed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.